Good, good morning. Welcome back to Morning Download. I'm Trajan. Today we're going to talk about the proposal for the Sovereign Wealth Fund. My entire life, I've heard about countries like Norway and United Arab Emirates and others having this sovereign wealth fund that is basically an investment fund or savings fund for a country. And I thought it was a great idea and it has a lot of potential. I've always wondered why the US doesn't have their own fund. And it turns out it's been tried many times before. In fact, the last administration, the Biden administration, talked about creating a sovereign wealth fund. They never proposed it took it as far as Trump has taken it. He's now signed an executive order. So what does it mean? Will this pass? What does it take to get it passed? And what does it mean for citizens of the United States? So here you can see that this picture of Trump signing the executive order just a few days ago. And we'll talk about the obstacles that it mentions in this article. So you'll see here that there are two people standing next to President Trump. The first is Howard Lutnick. He is the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. And the other, of course, is Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury. Why are they standing next to Trump? Because they would be the ones responsible for implementing and running this. For the Bitcoiners out there watching this video, Cantor Fitzgerald holds a 5% stake in Tether, which manages a lot of hefty treasury assets, including a lot of Bitcoin. And so he is very familiar. He's a crypto bull. He's very familiar with Bitcoin and how it works. And Cantor Fitzgerald has announced that they are opening a $2 billion Bitcoin financing lending program. So a lot of Bitcoin bulls have looked at this sovereign wealth fund as the next step into creating a Bitcoin strategic reserve. And just a couple of days ago, in the last couple of days, there have been more states that have proposed adding Bitcoin to their reserves. The number of states is now over 20. Two actually voted on it already and rejected it. Utah is going to be the next state to vote on it. Looks likely to pass. So we're seeing more states proposing this, and the country of Czechia or Czech Republic just announced that they're going to be buying Bitcoin. So that is kicking off. So the Bitcoin bulls are looking at this and thinking, well, maybe it's our turn. This is the next step. But let's talk specifically about the Bitcoin strategic reserve. About the sovereign wealth funds. So there are a lot of countries that actually have sovereign wealth funds. You can see here's a map of which countries have sovereign wealth funds and how much they have. Norway has the largest fund, which is $1.74 trillion, followed by China with 1.3 trillion, Saudi Arabia with just under $1 trillion, Abu Dhabi with about $1 trillion, Kuwait with about $1 trillion, Singapore with about $1 trillion, Qatar $500 billion, Australia 200 billion, Russia 150, and the UAE with about 300. So let's back up. So Trump signed this executive order to start the sovereign wealth fund. What is it? It's he's directing the Treasury and the Commerce departments to create a U.S. strategic sovereign wealth fund, and it aims to promote fiscal sustainability, reduce the tax burden on American families and businesses, and establish long-term economic security, and enhance U.S. economic and strategic. Exactly, this would work. As I just mentioned, people are talking about putting Bitcoin in the reserve. Trump has floated the idea of taking a part of TikTok and putting that ownership. A lot of venture capitalists, like on the All In Pod, they've talked about how the U.S. invests or donates or gives grants to companies to get them started in the U.S. And they're thinking about now taking a very small equity percentage of 0.5% or 1% in addition to the grant. So the sovereign wealth fund has some upside. If the government is going to be giving money to all these companies to get them started, like they did with the auto industry 15 years ago, and where they continue to do with a lot of companies, why not have a little bit of ownership in case that company does well? And if it does, then all that money would go into the sovereign wealth fund. So it's a way to to invest in America. It's a way to monetize government assets, which are projected to be about $6 trillion, and generate income off of those assets. So what it would take to get this done would be congressional approval, which it has not been approved before, and may not be approved this time. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. And there has been bipartisan interest in the strategic, in the sovereign wealth fund. I keep getting those mixed up. My apologies. So what are the pros of having a sovereign wealth fund? Of course, it promotes long-term investment in national projects, potentially stabilizing growth and growing the wealth of the country. It promotes fiscal sustainability, could help manage the debt by creating a revenue stream from these investments and assets. Could promote economic equality, potentially reducing inequality by investing in a broad base of economic benefits or distributing dividends to citizens, as we've seen with the Alaska Fund. So the Alaska Fund, there are states that own that. There are states that have kind of like sovereign wealth funds. And here's a map of the states. This is from Prof. St. Onge website. You'll see here that there are, let's see, about 9 states that have sovereign wealth funds, similar to sovereign wealth funds, state wealth funds. And usually what happens is the state will take some of their, some tax revenue, but a lot of them come from oil revenues or surplus or confiscated money. All of that goes into the fund. And Alaska, you can see down here on the bottom left, Alaska in 2024, they paid their citizens $1,702 out of their fund. So you can see that it can generate money if it is done properly. So that's one of the benefits, is the government can strategically invest in assets to either pay down the debt or generate income and distribute that to the citizens. And then it also enhances U.S. strategic and economic influence globally through investments, like we've seen with some of the funds out of the UAE and others. They have invested all around the world. Norway, who has the largest fund, they invest in projects all around the world. So that gives them political influence. The U.S. tends to just donate money or give money to try to get political influence. Pros and cons to that, which I won't go into in this video. But the sovereign wealth fund is a way to invest rather than just giving or donating money. So in my opinion, I think it's a lot better way to go, because you have a potential return on your investment rather than just giving money, which a lot of it gets stolen and doesn't end up where it's supposed to go. Then use that money in a better way to just invest in projects that can generate a return. So some of the drawbacks of a strategic wealth fund are that it's politically challenging. It may not get approved by Congress, and it could be used as a way to manipulate or misuse the funds. There are economic risks. What if the country invests in a project and it doesn't do well? You remember during the Obama administration, he famously invested $500 million in Solara, which went belly up, and people were not happy with that. That was an investment that didn't go well. So if the fund doesn't do well, then American citizens will not be happy. And then of course they'll have to be transparent, and everything will have to be out in the open for it to be successful. So let's hope this new transparency that's promised by the U.S. government really comes to fruition, because it will be needed if we have a sovereign wealth fund. And then markets distortions. It could create distortions in the market where the government is investing in companies. They could be seen as picking winners, which people don't like. They didn't like that during the Obama administration with Solara, where they were seen as picking winners and promoting the winners. People have pointed out how the pandemic may have been even worse if the government had a stake in the pharmaceutical companies, and they're promoting vaccines and in hopes of getting a return. So it kind of has some conflict of interest. I think they were doing that anyway. So I don't know if that would have changed anything, in my opinion. So there are definitely some drawbacks. If a future government misuses the funds, we have, which will probably, if this happens, will probably be the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. We'll have at least $1 trillion, maybe more. That could be misused. It could be misappropriated. The funds could be invested into things that people don't agree with, and it could be become a real political time bomb. But I think the potential is there for the U.S. to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve, take some of the assets that we have, money from tariffs coming in, and put that into a savings account, into an investment account. We can direct the money around the world in a much more open and transparent way. So I've got hope for both the sovereign wealth fund, which I think we should have had for a long time. We should have had a long time ago, and the strategic Bitcoin reserve, even given the potential drawbacks. So what do you think? I'd love to hear your comments below on whether you think this is a good idea or a bad idea. And if you want more up-to-date analysis and market news, then go to morningdownload.com to get our free daily personal finance newsletter where we talk about the markets and how you can benefit. We'll see you next time. Oh, and I made another video which you might like about how you can save better and invest better. So check that out.